What is going on, everyone? Welcome to the Tell Me More podcast presented by Major League Success. I have John Lubinsky with me. He's with the Lubinsky team at Remax Affiliates. And this is going to be the John and John show. I'm excited. We got one spelled Jon, one John. This is going to be a good time.
Heck yeah, I'm excited.
and clearly John is at a way better location and destination than where I'm at. So I'm a little bit jealous seeing those palm trees, in the
Right?
background.
Let's pretend. let's just pretend it's one of those virtual things.
Exactly. Well, John, I appreciate you jumping on here today, on the Tell Me More podcast. And, we were talking a little bit, before we started. And, this podcast is all about just sharing, your journey into this business and, showing other agents that there's multiple paths to get to this point and there's multiple ways to find success. So I appreciate your time, especially you being on vacation and joining us. But we always start in the beginning. We always start about growing up. What was life like for you, as a kid, going through, middle school, going through high school? What was life like for you?
Right. I think I might need a therapist after this, or this might be my therapy. No, so I mean, pretty standard growing up. I was actually born in a suburb of Cleveland, so I did my first 10 years in Menor, Ohio. And I think that really formed a lot of me. We lived on a street, we always call it the Mill Shore Gang, because the camaraderie and the friendships that were developed there on that street have lasted a lifetime, and I still communicate with them, with everyone that lived there. But we kind of got ripped away from that I was fifth grade. My father transferred to Columbus, or to Westerville, but to work for Bank One at the time, which was later got absorbed by Chase. I grew up with three sisters. I was the only boy, so I kind of had to fend for myself, even though they'll say I was the one that mom and dad went light on. I think I was just the good kid, and
Yeah.
they didn't like that. I remember one time they went on strike against me. Well, strike against boys, but I was the only boy, so
Yeah.
they went on strike and made signs and everything. Strike against boys. I didn't, they didn't know what striking was, but they were on strike against me for some reason.
Yeah. That's awesome. It's so crazy how sometimes, small world it is. You grew up in Menor. My high school years, I went to Madison.
Oh yeah, nice.
So I moved up to Madison. So I was there my freshman year through senior year, and then I came down here and went to Ohio State, and I just stayed. So it's just crazy. I get agents on here, and they're like, "Oh yeah, I'm from," because I moved around a little bit, growing up, and like, I'm from Youngstown. Oh no way, like I'm from, so Menor. Right. Yeah, the mall was the thing.
Menor Mall. Absolutely. My father used to run a lot, and he would do what's called the Johnny Cake Jog. So it was down Johnny Cake Boulevard there. We used to go and watch as kids. We'd watch them do the races and stuff. So that was kind of fun.
Yeah. Did you get into, what were some of the hobbies and things for you growing up?
Wait, before I tell you that, I got to tell you, I got lost at Menor Mall when I was a kid. Apparently, I got lost a lot, my mom tells me. But I remember the Menor Mall one specifically because I lost them. I couldn't find out where they were. But the one thing I knew and I remembered was where the car was. So I just went and sat on the car. Some stranger brought me into the mall, and they made that announcement, "Hey, we found this kid."
That's funny.
So anyhow, but at Menor Mall. So there you go.
That's hilarious.
So we'll continue on. What was the question?
So what was some of the hobbies for you growing up? Were you into sports? Were you always an entrepreneur? Kind of what were you into? Going through middle school, high school.
Oh man. So elementary school, I was the playground football player. That was it. All about football on the playgrounds, and then dirt biking in the evenings or after school. We'd go out and play dirt bike. I went to Westerville. I lived in Westerville, so went to Point View Elementary. If you know where that's at, I don't know, but they had now it's all like baseball fields and stuff. But at the time, they turned it into these awesome dirt bike tracks. So we would do that in like seventh grade. Got really into computers, but kind of on a dorky level. Commodore 64 was the big thing back then. I'm a little older, which is why I'm actually on vacation, because I celebrated my 50th birthday, so my wife
Oh,
brought
there
me.
you go.
So I'm a little bit older, and yeah, so Commodore 64, really dorked out on that for a while, and then I come maybe 8th grade got really into skateboarding. So I was a big skateboarder, and then became a snowboarder, um,
Okay.
which is where I kind of grew all my bonds with my buddies and stuff,
Sure.
and actually introduced me to my first career, which was photography. Um, I started I started that by shooting photos for our local zine. So
Okay. Okay. And so when you're going through high school, did you end up going to college, or did you just kind of go into the work field?
yeah, so no, I graduated Westville South in '91. Went directly to Ohio State. And sorry, I don't know why I'm getting notifications here if it's dinging on your end. Um, uh, so I went to Ohio State to study architecture. Um, I've always had an interest in drawing and creating things, and I thought it'd be really cool to create space. But I found out my other interest was really in photography. In Ohio State, for whatever reason, those few years in the early '90s, they didn't have a photography program. They kind of had removed it.
Hmm.
So I decided, maybe quarters in, which now it's semesters, but it was quarters then. So that's what, a year and a half in,
Yeah.
um, that I didn't want to do architecture, and I was going to focus on photography. So I actually left there, and to figure things out, I went to Columbus State and just took all their photo classes, everything I could right away. Just took all the photo, and I asked an instructor there. Then I said, "Hey, I really want to get into photography. What's the best school in the country to go to for photography? Just put it out there as a pipe dream." And at the time he said RIT in Rochester, New York. So I set my sights there. I applied in '96, '97, and I think it was '96 I applied. I was accepted, um, and then I just had to figure out how to get there and how to pay for it. Uh, and I was transferring, even though I had all that education, I was transferring in really as a sophomore. They told me I'd have 3 years.
Sure.
But talking to the counselor and figuring things out, I was able to cut that down to 2 years. So I graduated from RIT with a degree in professional photography, professional
Okay.
photographic illustration, to be specific.
Okay. And what, I'm always curious, especially, those college years, right? Like, how did you come to the determination that just architecture wasn't your thing, and then making that pivot it's to photography? Because a lot of us, I didn't really have a lot of pressure on me, but you have societal pressure, right? Of like, photography is more, and I may be misspeaking, but it's kind of more like free, right? Like, it's like, what's the next
Yeah.
move after college? And for me, my story is I failed calculus. I was going for accounting at Ohio State. I failed calculus, and I made a change. I made a change there, and luckily it all played out. But what was some of that thought process? Some of those
Right.
conversations of making that change. Going from like architecture degree to photography.
Well, I kind of, instead of, creating a path for myself, I let the world kind of guide me. And
Okay.
I remember questioning it and just struggling with some of the history classes and stuff I had to take for architecture. I wanted to be creative. I've always been creative. That's my direction, and I didn't feel I was getting that opportunity. And I was actually working on a portfolio for the architecture school, and I remember down in the basement, and I was cutting mats for the pieces or whatever, and honest to God, the utility knife jumped the ruler edge and sliced up my finger right up the nail, and I was just bleeding everywhere. And I just said, nope. I said, I'm not going. It was a decision like that. It wasn't right. So
Yeah.
the universe was telling me, hey, this isn't what you're supposed to be doing.
No, that's awesome. I'm always so curious about that because I had to make that decision, my own, and just again, I'm sure we'll definitely be getting into it, the path to real estate and the other decisions that get to that point. And so
Right.
you go to RIT,
Uh-huh.
right? And you ended up graduating. What was kind of the next couple steps for you in that career path?
God, I was really lucky because they say in art degree, you don't really come out and have any kind of career. I think even in architecture, they were telling us if you got a job at $6.50 an hour coming out of school, you were doing well.
Mm.
And in photography, they would tell us that, hey, if you're doing weddings, you're the only ones that are going to survive. And I don't do weddings, and I never have and never would. But one thing they did teach us is how to reach out to local photographers and become assistants to them, and learn the ways from them. And that's what I did. Uh, a part of our senior class was doing that, to reach out to them, send them promo pieces we had to create, and then turn it all in back into the professor, for them to review. And I just happened to get lucky. A couple photographers picked me up really quick on a freelance assisting, but very frequently used. And one of them was a photographer in town that actually graduated from RIT about 23 years prior to me.
Wow.
So he gave me a shot right in the early days. So.
Yeah. And what was some of the things that, some of those projects, and did they pay, or was it just all voluntary?
Yeah, no, I never worked for free. They always paid. I had a day rate. I ran my own business as a freelance assistant, charging, I don't know, back then, maybe $150 a day or something, enough when I come out of college, right around 99, 2000. So it was enough, but definitely could have been better. And I got really lucky because I was only a year into it, and I was hired as basically a first shooter, for a gentleman who owned a studio there in Columbus. So
Okay.
it didn't take me long to make that transition.
And were you just kind of doing more like portraits or lifestyle shoots, or were you kind of just what kind of the stuff were you capturing with the camera?
Yeah. So the first stuff that I did, the first guy I was working for, he had the uh, contract to shoot all of Schottenstein's Value City
Okay.
stuff. So I would shoot. I used to tease I had a whole portfolio of vacuums because I would shoot so many vacuums, but it was a lot of products, so a lot of shoes, a lot of vacuums, a lot of clothing, and then got onto the on-figure fashion stuff. And Suzanne Horner, if she's watching this, she was one of the first ones that I actually shot as a model.
Oh,
Uh,
wow.
so there you go.
Wow.
We've known each other a long time.
Talk about small world, right?
Right. Absolutely. Yep. We always are excited when we get to talk to one another real estate wise. So.
Yeah. So how long did you do that? How long were you doing that for?
Um, so I did commercially, I did it for 13 years. And I also taught at Columbus State as an adjunct for 12 years, teaching, black and white photography in the beginnings, moving into digital photo, and then teaching the advanced digital classes. And I kind of became the gatekeeper. My job was kind of to make people quit before they got to the higher level classes. And I don't want to say quit, but, to
Yeah.
challenge them a little bit more and make them really think through what they're doing.
Yeah.
I think most of my students will tell you that at least in one of the classes, somebody cried. It wasn't to hurt anybody's feelings. It wasn't anything personal, no personal attacks. But when you tell people that their work isn't as good as everybody else in the world has told them, it's hard to take sometimes.
Yeah, and it's just, that's standard, right? As far as what you're looking for. And, I am not an artistic person. So like, one, you would probably be able to tell, the difference between two different photos. I would not be able to, but, I'm sure some of that basis is the standard that you need, right? In order to have the success in that industry and in that business.
Yeah, absolutely. They taught us that at RIT, and that's why I used to say to my students the first day was, hey, look, you guys are hiring me to teach you how to improve your photos. I'm not here to just to tell you they're good. I said, you could save a lot of money and just ask your mom to give you a critique, Then, so that's kind of my point is, do you want me to upset you, or do you want a client to walk away from you?
Yeah.
Because that's essentially what the other critique's going to be.
I'm sure, that has probably helped you a lot in your real estate career, asking, the hard questions, delivering, the hard truth that,
Right.
a buyer or a seller doesn't want to hear.
That's right.
Because that is, some of us, myself included, struggle with that, you
Right.
know.
I know.
Um, and so lead me up to kind of, the point of you making that decision to get into the business. What were kind of the next couple steps for you before you got into real estate?
Oh, before I got into real estate, so I had worked for several studios. In 2008, I was actually laid off with a half-hour notice, no
Wow.
severance, no future pay, no nothing. Just you have a half hour, grab your stuff, and get out. And it was the entire department was let go. So it was kind of a kick in the butt, like, oh man, what are we going to do? My wife at the time was a freelance stylist, and she was freelancing for the same company. So none of her freelance pay got paid out.
Mm,
Um, and it's one of those things where you really start to have to reflect on what's going on. So um, in 2009, I got licensed originally. And of course, you know how good the market was in 2009. It wasn't the best, but I actually, I'll tell you, I was started out really strong, doing really well. Um, but I got an offer mid 2009 to go work for another photo studio. And with the direction the market was going, it seemed the most secure thing to do with having young children and everything.
sure.
So I did that. I took the job to go back into photography for a while. And in 2012, well, actually, I'd say it was 2011 or 2010. I don't remember the exact year, but I did there's a charity organization called Help Portrait. And Help Portrait, globally, on a certain day every year, they go and they take pictures of families or couples or people who are not as fortunate as most of us.
Yeah.
So it's in shelters, it's in battered women shelters, it's in YMCA's or whatever, and
Right.
we provide a free photo portrait to the people as a gift for them and something that they can give to family members during the holiday season. And that to me was like the cutting my finger with the knife, where I had this realization that what I was doing wasn't enough. I wasn't helping people. There was no fulfillment in photography, and I wanted to have a bigger impact on people's lives.
Yeah.
In in particular, it came down to one woman who, this is the first year I was doing Help Portrait. Who I'm okay. Let me set this up. There's all kinds of photographers there, and some of them are amateurish. Most of them are a little bit more amateur. Some of them have professional backgrounds. But they would set up several studio settings, and the people would go over there and get their picture with the photographer, and then the photographer would bring what we called everybody clients, because we wanted
Yeah.
to give them a lot of dignity.
Right.
They were treated very well and respected, and the photos were never used in any way other than giving it to them. They were deleted so that they could not be exploited in any fashion. But the people would come over, and then they would go to a digital artist who would upload the photos, and they would help them pick an image. And that year, I had the most experience in Photoshop, so I was working the computer, and this lady comes over with the photographer, and they hand me the card, and I upload everything, so she's sorting through the images, and as I'm going through them and helping her select which ones to retouch and print, um, you could hear her sigh, and I said, I'm sorry, is there something wrong? Do you not like the images? Do we need to reselect or do we need to reshoot? And she said, no, no, no. She goes, I just was hoping the knot on my head would be gone before this.
Mm,
I was like, and I go, oh, no, no problem. Let me Photoshop it. And I took it out and I turn around and she's sobbing. And I'm like, oh my goodness. I'm like, is everything okay? Did I do something? And she said, no, no, no. She goes, I haven't seen myself like that since my husband threw me down the stairs.
mm,
And that was that moment where I was like, things have to change. I got to do something that, have a little bit more impact.
mm. No, that's awesome. That's an amazing story. Are they still doing that today in Columbus?
I have not seen it in Columbus. And I will tell you, one of the big promoters of it here passed away this year. And he was young, in his 40s. And just nothing wrong. There was nothing wrong with him that anybody knew. Just passed away in his sleep.
Hmm.
So I don't know what's going to be the future of it. I would love to see them do it again. The pandemic kind of stopped a lot of that, but
Sure.
I'd love to see them pick it back up.
What an awesome story. And I want to go back, to, that first decision to get into real estate in '08. How, like, did you have an interest in real estate? Like, how did you come to the
Oh,
decision that real
yeah,
estate's the next move for you?
right. So in 2008, it was my father was a big influence on that because my father was in real estate for a long time, and it fit well, but it wasn't until that incident with the help portrait that really instilled it in me to say that that's really where I need to be. And even then it kind of took me a little bit of soul searching. um, I I knew that I had to get out of photography. I knew I had to do something. And the funny thing is, like, well, I'll get to that in a minute, but anyhow, so I just kept, like, kind of looking at other things that I could do, and I really realized that all these people for years would come up to me and ask me if I was Jim's son. And yeah, that's my father. And they'd always have a story to tell about buying their home with him or selling their home with him. And I was like, man, that's kind of cool. Like, you really do have a big impact on people's lives doing this.
Yeah.
And so that's kind of what did it. But I will tell you, when I finally made the decision, it was June of 2012. I told my boss at the time, the studio I was working at, and I said, look, I'm going to finish this. We have a big project every year. I'm going to finish this project, and then I'm gone. I'm going to change careers. I'm going to go into real estate. And nobody believed me. Nobody actually thought I was going to do it. And then in that same year, in like September, I was offered a really good job to go work for American Eagle in Pittsburgh. And it was a tough one. I talked to my wife, and I finally came to the conclusion that family was more important. I had 2 young kids at home, and picking up and moving wasn't an option. So it would have been me commuting on being home for weekends and being gone during the week.
Yeah.
I decided there's just no way I can do that, and it doesn't check the box of fulfillment that
Yeah.
that I was seeking. So
Yeah. What was some of those? I mean, I always ask when people get into the business, a lot of times it's their, second career choice, third career choice, fourth career choice. And a lot of times you're leaving, an hourly job or a salary job to go into 100% commission base. You had little ones, right, at the time, and making that decision, like, supporters, doubters, obviously you had family, your dad was in the
right.
business. Like, what was some of those conversations like for the people that are, truly impact? I mean, that's a big decision, right, with the little ones. And at that time, the first time around '08, but then 2011, 10, 12, coming out of it, that's when I got in, was 2011.
Yeah.
um what were some of those conversations like? Because there may be some people listening in that are like on the fence, right, and they just, they're afraid to make that leap of faith.
It's exactly what it is. You just nailed it. It's a leap of faith. It was literally talking to my wife and saying, I know this could go wrong, but I think it could go right too. Um, I said, I got to do it. I got to try. And it literally was just cutting or ripping off that Band-Aid and, saying, hey, look, I'm throwing caution to the wind. There's bigger plans. And, I hope everything I've done to this point in my life is going to get me to that next stage. But it literally was kind of rolling the dice, hoping for the best.
Yeah. What were some of the so 20, was it 2011, 2012 is when you fully jumped in? Now, when you were
12,
before,
yeah.
okay. And before that year before that, were you kind of doing real estate on the side, or were you still just all in on the photography stuff?
I was relicensed because I actually let my license lapse.
Okay.
So I was relicensed in May of 12. Of course, all I had to do was take the test.
Sure.
It's still valid. The tests or the classes are still valid. Um, and man, I think I had a couple things in the works prior, but not a ton. It really, really came down to I'm just going to go full force into it and see what happens. And you got to trust your sphere of influence. I thought this is probably the biggest thing that if anybody's going to take anything away from it that's on the fence, I thought changing careers meant changing everybody that knew me
Mm,
for what I do. Do you
mm,
know what I'm saying? Like, I was
mm-hmm.
known as a photographer, so people could hire me as a photographer, and everybody that I worked with, all my colleagues and clients and students, all knew me as a photographer. So if I ever went to them for photography work, it made sense. But if I ever approached them for real estate work, how are they going to know that I even know what I'm doing? Um,
Right.
so it boils down to three things: know, like, and trust. And all of those people in every facet of my prior career, they knew me, they liked me, and trusted me. So they all made that switch with me, and it went seamless. I can't tell you how many past, in fact, I'm working with one right now, a past student that has come to me for real estate needs. Several others have. Past colleagues and clients that I used to shoot for have also come to me for real estate needs. So if you've set yourself up with a good sphere of influence, don't be afraid.
I want to dive into that a little bit because, I help a lot of agents just from our team. We like to, attract newer agents to our team. And that thing that you mentioned about, you know, getting from the photography, seeing you as the photographer, right, to now you're the real estate agent. And I don't know if you did anything differently, but can you dive into that piece? Like, how did you get them to switch from seeing you in the light of the photographer to now, John knows his stuff about being, in the real estate space and in the business, and we do trust him with real estate because I think a lot of people struggle with that identity, right? And a lot of sphere of influence struggle with that identity.
So who do you think is struggling with it more? Do you think it's the agent struggling with it, or do you think it's the actual sphere of influence struggling with it?
I think that's a great question. I think sometimes agents are afraid to put themselves out there in the real estate space, right? Because it's outside of our comfort zone, right?
That's
It's not
right.
what we're used to.
That's exactly it. The sphere of influence has nothing to do with what you're doing. It's know, liking, and trusting them. And
Mm,
if you have that trust, that's what's important in real estate. It's not that I know everything, but they trust me that I will find out in the beginning, that I will find out what the right thing is and the right
yeah.
answer is and how to guide them appropriately. Um,
I, I'm there with you. If you are listening in, that is a gold nugget right there. Right? If you're trying to transition from one career to the other, that's it. That's the secret sauce. It's we got to get out of our own way, you know.
Absolutely. I am my own worst enemy. Absolutely. I mean, I
So
always say I succeeded in spite of myself.
so John, I want to dive into those first couple years into the business. 2012, 2013, 14, coming out of the recession, there's still,
Right.
foreclosures, short sales, all this stuff happening. What did you have a lot of success in the beginning? Did you just like hit the ground running? Did you have struggles? How did you
Uh,
think about, you mentioned building your business through your sphere. How did you think about building your business?
right. So I was really lucky. Of course, I had my father was still in the business the first year that I was in it. Um, and I was making those calls, like we had set up a website back then that was bank owned properties that did really well because that was the thing then. Everybody was looking for that deal on a bank owned property. So I was making a lot of calls for those things. And gosh, I would say 75% of them didn't buy a bank owned home. They were just a good contact. So
Yeah.
you got to make those calls. You got to pick up the phone. Don't hide behind a text. Don't hide behind an email. Pick up the phone. Most people still like to hear your voice. Yeah, there are some millennials that will prefer other sources, and that's fine. And you can hit them up that way as well. But you got to get out of your way and do the work. In that first year, um, so I told you I had an offer that was really good in Pittsburgh, and I told my wife, I said, I'm turning down a job that is quite significant. And I think that was my ammo. That's all I needed. Because if you turn down a good paying job, now you're forced to make it right.
Yeah.
And so I told her, I said, look, I'm gonna do that in my first year, and if we do, then I think we're good the rest of the way. And so I was able to match that my first year.
No, that's
Um,
awesome.
yeah,
That's
and
awesome.
then
And you're right about, judging, not judging leads, and people, right? Like I remember I did a deal one time. This probably would have been I don't even know, six years ago, and an agent in our office at my former brokerage came up to me like, "Hey, I don't know anything about HUD homes. Do you want this? Do you want this client?" And I cut my teeth in REOs. When I got into the business, we were selling off a bank portfolio, and I was like, "Sure, I'll take them."
Right.
That lead never bought a HUD home. They ended up just buying a normal house,
That's
So
right.
just never judging, a lead or someone that comes to you because you don't really know the full story in the beginning.
That's right. Absolutely. And again, it's some of those leads that, they might be a lower dollar, or they might be somebody that's struggling financially, or, had some background issues or something. But those are all people we can help.
Yeah.
Again, which is why I'm in the industry.
So your first year seemed like success because you were able to kind of match, what you turned down from that potential career move over to Pittsburgh. What happened over the next couple of years? Lead me up to,
Oh, wow.
kind of current day.
Yeah. So, well, that after the first year, my my father decided to retire. He was already kind of thinking about it, but it worked out that I could buy him out. And so he kind of took a back seat for a couple of years until his license had, came to renew, and it was finally like, yeah, let's just let it go, because he wasn't doing anything at that point. So, like 2013, I bought him out officially. At the time, there was one other agent on the team still. Uh, it wasn't a good match to split that business, so I took it on myself, and kind of selected my own agents to come on the team.
Sure.
One of them being Tatsuni Sei. She's my sister-in-law. That was a shoe-in. She's been with me, 8 years now, I think. And then another girl who came, she was actually interviewing with another agent. They couldn't use her, so she came over, and she had been a broker in Denver, and came here and decided to relicense in Ohio and start real estate again. And that's Michelle Bell. And she's now been with me, I think, 7 years, 6 or 7 years. So
That's awesome.
so now we're a team of three. My admin, Deb Helmrich, who has been with our team since right before I went into it. So over 10 years. But she's been with Remax affiliates in our office for like 30 years.
Wow.
She's assisted the broker, and she's assisted other agents. She's assisted my father, and and so she's been with us a long time, and she knows the ins and outs. So it's kind of cool to have that team behind me.
John, just curious, were you wanting to build a team and take over the team, or was it just because it kind of fell into your lap a little bit like that, and just kind of the right, passing
Right,
of that on to you? I'm just, because some agents get
right.
in there like, nope, I'm not dealing with other people. I just want to do, my own thing. And obviously some, want that team structure, just for leverage and stuff. I'm curious, because that was really
Right.
early on in your career to make that decision.
Absolutely. And there's two things to look at there. Do you want a team for growth and income, or do you want a team to help inspire you and to give you another opportunity to help other people? And I think
Mm,
that's kind of what it boils down to me is I can help them grow and fulfill their wishes as well.
mm-hmm.
It's just another way for me to be another teacher, like I was in photography. And I
Yeah.
enjoy that part of it. I enjoy having the multi-layered of layers of real estate. So, yeah, I didn't do it to grow into this um, huge team. We're still three as far as licensed agents go. Will I add one? I maybe at one point. We did have four of us at one point, but I don't know. I don't know yet.
Yeah.
I'm not sure.
Yeah. No, that's awesome. That's awesome. And that's a testament to your leadership, right? That people have stayed that long, because in real estate, especially in a team, format, I think that what the average is, every 3 to 4 years, they're with you for about 3 to 4 years. And, you have
Yeah.
someone that's been with you for 7 and 8, and, a person that was with you and your father before that. So,
Right.
that's awesome that that you have that loyalty, and that they trust you as the leader, and that culture that you're building.
Right. Well, I mean, you could say every people leave because the grass is greener somewhere else.
Sure.
I don't know if agents believe that they're not meeting their goals because of the brokerage they're with or whatever. Sometimes that happens, and that's what they blame it on or whatever. Um, but I believe I take everything is on me. Like if I'm not performing, it's me, and I side first and try to figure out how can correct that rather than trying to point a finger somewhere else.
Yeah.
And our team has, my father started our team, but he started it with Remax affiliates. We have always been with Remax affiliates. I think it was 1993 it started. So
Wow. Wow. That's awesome. That's awesome. So I want to kind of fast forward into the future. I want to be respectful of your time because obviously you're down in paradise, and hey, it is 57 degrees here today, or at least it was. That was the high. So
don't worry, I think it's only 75 here. But I do have this view. I mean,
there yeah. I would love to just swap places. The beach
right?
and sand is where I need to be. Water and sand. That's where I need to be.
Yeah.
But John, I want to kind of look into the future for you and your future, real estate business. What's something that you're looking to accomplish here in the next 12 months?
That's a good question. The market is always an unknown. So when you set your goals, you always have to keep the expectation that things may change. So my goal currently, my goal in the last couple of years has really been to grow Totsany and Michelle more than myself. Um, until I take my foot off the gas once in a while and try to get a little bit more relaxation now that I'm 50. No, but really to grow them and help them achieve what their goals are. But I also just to stay consistent with the amount of business that I'm doing personally. It's enough that I live a comfortable life and I can service all of my clients thoroughly without feeling like I'm pulled apart.
Yeah, no, I love it. Do you have a 5-year goal of what you're looking to accomplish? Something that you're looking to accomplish in the next 5 years?
No, but I have a 12-year goal.
I want to hear
I'm gonna be right here.
it.
No, I mean somewhere 62 to 65. I do plan on retiring. I know that doesn't happen for agents.
Yeah,
They always say you won't retire. You work till you die. And then, no, that's not what life is about. Life is about enjoying the journey, and then enjoying it more when you don't have to go to work every day. So, um,
yeah,
that's down the road. For now, gosh, 5 years is a long time out. I don't really look at that picture. Even when I have my team set their goals, I told them set your first quarter goals because it's more realistic to see it in a shorter term.
yeah,
Bigger picture, I guess, would be scale back them and grow the business still. Scale back myself and grow the business still is what I meant.
yeah.
So that my team is carrying most of the load.
Sure.
Because we work more like a law firm would, where we each have our own individual clients,
Gotcha.
and we're there to help each other throughout the transaction if needed.
Yeah, yeah. No, that's awesome. Um, I'm curious. Do you have a legacy goal? A goal that you're trying to hit when you're no longer here?
Um, no, I mean, ultimately, I just want to leave. I want to leave the world a better place. As I know, you can't do that as a single individual, but at least my sphere, I can.
Hmm.
Um, so I want to leave it as better than I found it, better than it is
Yeah.
today.
Yeah,
That's all.
that's awesome. That's awesome. I was asked that question a couple of months
Yep.
ago, and I don't think most of us maybe put much thought into that. And it
Yeah.
was just one of those things that kind of hit me in between the eyes. It was like,
Right.
truly, what is that legacy goal when you're no longer here, and
What
what are
is
you
your
doing
yeah?
today? Yeah,
What is
it's
your
like, what do we
why?
do?
Yeah. What is your why?
Exactly,
You got to know your
E-
why, and that's it.
exactly,
You do say
exactly.
here's one thing. Like and I don't know if you ever watch Undercover Boss.
Yeah,
Okay, so in Undercover Boss, at the end they always go and they take care of their employees that did a good job and take care of whatever their personal needs are or whatever. Um,
yeah.
I want to be that person to be able to do those things, to be able to do
Wow.
those things for others, to be able to really impact their lives in that kind of way.
Yeah. No, that's awesome, John. I got one last question for you, and again, I really appreciate you taking your time, to come on here on your vacation. Take time away from your family and the sun and all of that. If you could give our audience one piece of advice, that you wish you had maybe starting
Um,
out, or one piece of advice that you give any agent about this
yes,
business, what would that be?
be you. That's all it takes. And I swear to God, because my agents will ask me, well, how do you get this? Like, how are you doing this many transactions? How did you get this? And I say, well, look, I can tell you, but I don't want you to be me. I want you to be you, because they're going to buy you. They're not going to buy me from you. You want to
Hmm.
be you. Be 100% authentic to who you are.
That's awesome. That's awesome. John, I appreciate you. Thank you so much for coming on here. Those that are watching, if you're someone that's looking to buy, sell, invest, here in Central Ohio, his phone number's down there, his email's down there. If you're a real estate agent and you just want to, pick his brain, make sure that you reach out to him. I'm sure he's going to answer any questions you have about this business. But John, for those that are listening in, what's the best way for them to contact you?
My phone is probably the easiest, 614-746-4884. Calls, love to talk to you, love to have coffee, even if it's somebody that's looking to buy or sell, or another agent that is getting into the business and just ask questions. Do it all the time.
John, thanks so much. I appreciate you. And if I can ever do anything for you, please reach out to me. I'm here to help you any way I can.
I appreciate it. Thanks for having
Thank
me
you so
on.
much.
Yeah,
Yeah,
thanks,
it was a
John.
blast.
Absolutely.